Greetings. It's been a minute. It's been an hour. It's been a while since we've come together for sharing from the 40th parallel. A lot has changed in both of our lives.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but yeah, we're able to be here today. Thankful. Uh, Special unification because we're here with the Pittsburgh Portal
Mm.
family, Brother Khufu and
Mm-hmm.
Brother John, made their way. What's up, fellas? All right, he's going to just holler or something so that,
Yes, sir. Give
can, yeah,
thanks.
feel your
So much
spirit.
thanks.
And we're able to meet here, what, about 30 miles out of Lancaster?
Lancaster City, that's probably 10 miles,
10
10 to
miles.
15 miles north of us.
All right.
Um, yeah, we're in southern Lancaster County, in
Southern
Nome countryside.
Nome countryside.
So the last time we did this, it was probably, I remember it was cold, but it was springy. So I'm going to say April or May,
Right,
maybe early April. And we were in Baltimore.
right.
And the spring was just starting to thaw. Like it wasn't green out, but we're like, hey, let's do it outside. It was a great idea when we're inside. And remember, we got down because we had to walk down this steep slope to get down there. And I'm like, wow, maybe this wasn't a good idea.
Hmm.
Like this is kind of cold. But I was thinking that, and I was coming out of something personally, and we were sitting in a very similar situation in the fact that we were adjacent to a
Some running
waterway,
water. Yes.
and so now we're finding ourselves 3 months, 4 months, 5 months later. What would that be? So April, May, June, July, August. So 5 months have passed.
Wow.
So roughly 150 days.
Wow.
World is turned upside down like 3 or 4 times. And now we're finding ourselves here in this way where it's different though, because we went from West Baltimore, and now here we are in like in the Amish world.
Right.
And we were sitting across from each other. Whatever that was, that was what that conversation is. And now I don't think that we've done this before,
Hmm.
right? So it's like looking at these subtleties, because this has been a journey. This has been a journey from the first time we made this conversation, the very first Zoom presentation we made from the 40th parallel. And it's included everyone who's watched this. Like, there's no separation. We're all in this dance together. And so seeing what this past year has been, and there have been some really interesting markers, and then watching that unfold and having some analysis, I think, in what we've experienced is going to be very much felt in a paralleled way to anyone else who's sharing this community with us. And so
Yes.
I think that's kind of what I would like to talk about. I just want to say what these points are. So we've got we'll use when we record in Baltimore, when we went to Pittsburgh, Mycofest, and then we've got this right here.
Yes.
And so, and you made reference to Brother John and Khufu, and that all began in Pittsburgh. So we can see how this is a build,
Yes.
right? And this is where we are right now. So what I think what I think is going to be interesting is let's begin by talking a little bit about what Mycofest was and what happened there,
Hmm.
and
So
what
that
was revealed.
that was in July, right?
Nope, that was
Beginning of August.
beginning of
Beginning of
August.
August.
Beginning of
All right.
August.
All right.
It was so we were there at the first quarter of that lunation, and we are approaching the first quarter of the next
Of the next,
lunation.
so it was about a lunar cycle
Yeah,
ago.
yeah. In terms of day count.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah. Wow. It was a great experience. We were invited by William Padilla Brown
Mm-hmm.
to come and be a part of that scene, which was, I would characterize it as a confluence of visionary minds with so many visionary people in their own lane, right? the vast majority of them was dealing with the nutraceutical health and psychotropic dimensions of the mushrooms, you know. But there were other, you know, just people focused on earth and living in oneness, because I like being able to see that collective of people on that mushroom frequency all in one place. I really observed mushrooms give you that singularity perspective, you know. Even if everyone's mushroom journey is different, it breaks down the polarity in your lens of reality, you know. So people on that oneness, singularity, consciousness was, you know, sharing their thing up there. And I guess because we're kind of on that vibe, that's why they invited us, you know.
Well, so it ties in, like, you know, when you look at it as like a current, like one continuous like unfolding. So it is a direct byproduct of what happened in Pittsburgh.
Mm.
So what Pittsburgh was you and I began by talking about, like, well, first we recognized that Pennsylvania, like, isn't a real thing. It's only real in the fact that there's a border. This is a region. And so it doesn't end on the border. But that has happened, you know, that is,
Right.
and we understand that. We're playing within that boundary. So we'll play within that. And within Pennsylvania, my work and your work of the Eastern River, you know, the Delaware River, Delaware Bay, mine in almost the middle, which would be the Susquehanna, was then met by on the western part of the state. And that's what the Pittsburgh event was. It was like a unification, and we built upon that. From what we shared when that occurred in April,
Right.
it was from that William Padilla Brown, he saw that, and he's like, hey, I would love to have you guys come and be a part of this.
Wow.
And so that opened that door. And then when we arrived there was a reunification, a remembering of all of the people from Pittsburgh.
Right, because the Pittsburgh crew came to be a part of it.
Right.
Ross Naeem of Infinite Treasures, who was born and raised in Pittsburgh, but is kind of based in South Carolina at this point in his life. But he came up to be a part of it. And
the participants.
Harrisburg community, Sister Emily. And,
we had a lot of people who this resonates with, that they're
Right.
like, okay, I know that this is
I'm
something.
on the 40th parallel. I'm feeling this information is resonating with me. Yeah, so I was thankful how the collective, because I did have to ask myself, like, what does this thing really have to do with mushrooms? How are they going to receive this? But it was like there was enough of us there on the awareness, talking about it, and you know. So yeah, man, I was thankful that it was a collective of us on this awareness.
And it was also, so, you know, I like to look at our regular life the way like someone would look at a dream. You know, you have a dream, they're like, oh, I dreamt that I picked up at this. They're like, oh, this symbolizes that. I just look at regular life that way. And what happened there, we met, or we as the people from the Pittsburgh meeting, because that was the first time we all came together. Like, this was like some first time meetings. Like, some people knew each other, but it came together. It was just that weekend, but something happened there, and then it reoccurred in where Mycofest was happening. And when that happened, and so what was interesting, the first thing was we were the first of the vendors to arrive.
Yes.
So we
had the prime. We got the early bird catch the fat worm,
and we get the best spot. So we set it up, but we set it up as they're like the vendors. Like, you set up, you got a tent, and we're like, Right. It was Ross Naeem was like, we're putting it in and we're wrapping it. Yeah. This is one thing.
Yes.
and that held the space. And
Yes.
so like this idea, like I believe it was Mycofest, was it their 10th? Mycofest, was it their 10th or 7th? It wasn't their first.
Yeah, I think it's their eighth, maybe.
8th. It was somewhere in between.
Yes.
But from what I gathered, was this was the first, like traditionally it had a very scientific, it was a festival, but the presenters, it was a world-class gathering of like art mycologists,
Right.
like presenting, like, and
Right.
everything in that world. So this year like opened up to something wider, the unification. It's like we're open-minded, we're understanding the science, we're understanding the experience, and now we want to understand the history.
Huh.
And so we had that space. So I want to hand it back to you, but I want to set it up two ways. One was it met you personally in a very like interesting time,
Right.
and so I want to offer that as an opportunity to step in. And then secondly, the information which you presented there, like I want to, once we go through the first part, go into that, because that is where I think the real like synchromistic magic took place.
Yes. Well, I will say it was very healing for me to be out there, right? Beyond just getting out of filthy Dulphia and getting into some nice nature, lovely nature, very similar to like this, because there was a running stream behind us where we were vending, with a lot of frogs. So I think in 3 days I experienced one mosquito. You could tell them frogs was doing their work, you know, and but yeah, I do regret to say uh, from Pittsburgh, it's been hard to keep track of this year. What month? Pittsburgh was in May,
I
right?
believe so.
From May to early August in Mycofest, I lost my firstborn son, you know, and it was a blow to the family. He was 28 years old. He was challenged with epilepsy from like his teenage years, grand mal epilepsy. So we're still waiting for the final determination, but it appears like he may have had a serious seizure in his sleep. Seems like he transitioned in his rest. So we do take comfort in that, you know. Like, hey, that's how I would like to go out, you know? And he was a mystical youth. Some might describe it as schizophrenic. Others might describe it as just in touch with, dimensions and timelines we can't see right here. You know what I mean? Ancestors, you know? So it's been a lot to process. But Mycofest for me uh, helped a lot, you know? Being out in the nature. I brought my lady with me, and you know, we we were thankful for that time in nature and the collective, you know. And I will say, because you said you wanted to talk about the times, right? The whole theme of Pittsburgh was the portal of portals. Uh, Jupiter and Neptune conjunct in Pisces, you know. And I will have to say, uh, yeah, right. I did have to learn that, when you say portal of portals, man, the portal of portals is death. You know, death is, and the portal of portals can manifest in a multitude of ways, but death, the concept, the idea, the taste, the grief, the remember, something about death has got to be a part of
Hmm.
it. And how there was a Mycofest, and then I even know Kalindi IE in Detroit, they had their, what was the name of it?
Detroit Psychedelic Conference.
The Detroit Psychedelic Conference. All of them occurred in this portal of portals, time. But mushrooms is like a death and rebirth. If you really tune into what's happening, you that DMT, that chemical that's released uh, in the death experience, you're experiencing it on levels, but being reborn,
Mm-hmm.
coming back from it, So, right, in a exalted state, that is how you would experience the portal of portals, with a shaman doing those works. And we saw that happening at Mycofest. I didn't make it to Detroit, but I know John did, and Ras Naeem, Infinite Treasures, made it, you know. But there was a lot of death around me. Like 3 people very close to me died in 3 weeks,
Hmm.
3 strong, A youth that was a former student of mine, uh, honored elder, the patriarch of my mother, of my in-laws family, my wife, the in-laws, the elder uh, male of that family, and then my son, So I had to do a lot of meditation on death, and like I said, my son being like the seizures put him in touch with realities that it's hard for us to, overstand and relate
Mm-hmm.
to. But that was one thing that he would really want. He would want you to listen and try to understand what he's seen, you know, whatever it was at that time, He'd be on a lot of stuff, and a lot of stuff would sound like like utterly ridiculous because it might be uh, intertwined with some entertainment he saw, like a superhero something,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it'd be hard to listen to, but I would make that effort. And he said some real profound stuff right before he checked out, even like, hey, I'm about to check out, you know? And like the timing, how it went down, it was almost like, are you listening? You know? And then my daughter put me on to this series on Amazon. I don't even mean to be giving no commercial for this thing, right? But it was a show called Undone, which is about this. It's about what appears like schizophrenia may actually be someone who's in tune with their ancestors and trying to heal their bloodline karma. Yo, so to see that, uh, as a part of this journey of the portal of portals, it's been real profound. And but what I could definitely say is, it seems like every key moment in 2022 with this portal of portal energy, it's been like this community, this connection. Because Ras Naeem was in Philly. I was on the phone with Ras Naeem when I got the news. It was the day Crystal Joan, who is a powerhouse in Philly, uh, just in terms of being able to bring ones together, bring community together. And she's a younger generation, right? But she's one of them youth, one of them younger ones that she's gonna hold tradition. She's gonna invite elders and give them space, and have libation. Have the elders do the libation, like she know what it is. And so of course I'm literally Ras Naeem had come up to be a part of, because she has a annual event, the Crystal Cookout, which is, it's about the hottest thing happening in Philly to be, if truth be told, as far as just young people and a vibe, uh, good food, good people, currency flowing, young people shining. So Ross had come up to be a part of it. I got the news I was lined up to help MC a little bit and do the libation and all that. Of course, hearing the news, I couldn't make it. But Ras Naeem was there to hold it down, and Philly got a good good taste of the infinite treasures, and the force that the brethren come with, So, but like I'm saying, this portal of portals is brought, like the least we could say is brought us together at these key points,
Well, from my perspective, what I saw was, the dates were already put into place, like in terms of the events, and then life unfolds, and as you're describing, you experience, not firsthand, but within firsthand of your family, like the portal of portals. Like this is what we invoked, we discussed
right?
Here. Like we were at the umbilical cord. This is where that is. This is like, if you want to go and look at the human body, what's the portal of portals in the human body of like where the life comes through, and like that's where we symbolically were, and we had that walk, like allegorically and literally we had that walk. And then when we see life, we're like, okay, this happened. This is it. And then I want to say it was probably 3 weeks from Messiah's passing, which was when Mycofest occurred. And
Right.
I remember thinking, like, from human being to human being, from father to father, I'm like, could I show up 3 weeks later? Could I? And I, I'm just like, just holding that space. What, just aware that this is something which is going on inside of you. And then I remember, like, shortly before that, you indicated, you're like, I'm going to go. And we talked a little bit about it, and you're like, this, maybe this is gonna meet me. Like the last 3 weeks, I don't even know what day it is. And you came, and then there was that group, and we were there.
Right.
And so, like what you're saying is like this unification, and like at the very least, But then I would say at the very most, and this is maybe a way to transition it. What you described, like the information, because we kind of beat around the bush in the earlier part of this conversation. You presented information of research on the area where the of Mycofest took place. Like you provided new information at this location, and that information, like to me, none of this is separate. Like it's all part of the same current.
Right.
And so, I've experienced in my own way what I would call my portals this year, right? Like there's a lot of things that are no longer in my life. Like, and my life has changed considerably. And so when we look at that and we look at all of these, and how this has probably met every single person, everyone's probably nodding and can appreciate this in some certain way. We went through that. So that being said, I would love for you to maybe like walk through what, we don't have the diagrams right now, but we could have a conversation of what it was that you were revealing to the audience at Mycofest.
Well, we could do this even better.
All right.
Because I already we recorded it. So we're going to just drop it in right now.
So right now, like this is okay.
Bam, we dropped it.
Geomancy of Pennsylvania and Stonehenge Gardens here. I actually heard a little bit about it from my friend that was talking to you, and I'm quite excited to hear about it. So I hope you guys are too. It should be a special treat to learn a little bit about this land and the energy here and what he has to say about geomancy. Thank you, Ray.
Yes, greetings. Love and respect to everyone. And I'm Rossman, a student of the Earth. Study what they would call the ley line grid of the planet, which is, we as humans, we have meridians in our body that acupuncturists or acupressurists could hit certain points on our meridians and realign our energy for the whole system of our body. Well, planet Earth is the same way. The study of that is called geomancy, and a lot of times when you look at the layout of cities geodetically on an Earth map, you see the Earth grid, right? So Pennsylvania is an interesting place in the Earth grid. We're going to kind of look at it and see what that might mean about here, Stonehenge Gardens, because I'm sure this has been a collective experience that is very grounded here. It's very comforting here. I'm coming from a major urban center, so just even getting into the nature has been a big shift to me. But I've been talking to ones from Maine and other natural places, and still when they come here, they say they feeling a certain vibe. And this location, I'm sure, is playing a big part in the collective healing we're experiencing. And so, looking at land from a geomantic perspective, sometimes it gives clarity and insight to why you could come to certain places and have those type of experiences. So that's what we're going to talk about today. All right, and I'm not going to get real deep into like the nuts and bolts of geomancy itself, but I will mention I do have a couple of books to reflect some of the research I've done. Great Mystery Philadelphia, Free Your Mound and Your Mind Will Follow. If you wanted to dig a little deeper, we are set up right here. But the question that, I've been asking myself, exploring Pennsylvania from a geomantic perspective, is this idea of Pennsylvania as the Keystone State. When you study a keystone that's the stone that the builder refused. That's a misshapen stone that is used to hold the portal open, you know. Keystones are the stones at tops of arches, and their geometric shape and proportion creates a natural tension with all of the stones in that arch to hold it open, right? So there's a lot of mystical dimensions to the keystone. Why is Pennsylvania the keystone state? You know, does that have anything to do with why the nation was birthed here? You know, that's a big question that we've been asking for a while. And then we find ourselves here at Stonehenge Gardens. Maybe a lot of clues are here. So this is like the questions we're seeking to answer. And one of the reasons we think the keystone state and the whole idea of the keystone being associated with Stonehenge, right, is because when you study the ley line grid of the earth, there's a very important ley line that runs from Stonehenge in the British Isles to Teotihuacan, Mexico, right? And all of the cities, all of the major cities in what we would call the Northeast Corridor, going from Boston through about Richmond, Virginia, Philadelphia being, you know, the major one within Pennsylvania. All of those cities rest on that ley line. Charlotte, North Carolina, Atlanta, Mobile, Alabama. These are other major cities that are on this ley line, right? Here's Ellicott City in Maryland, of course, Washington, D.C., Fredericksburg in Virginia, New Brunswick and Trenton in Jersey, Wilmington and Newark in Delaware. Plus, like I said, there's also many cities south in North Carolina. Here's a list of them. Augusta, Columbia, South Carolina, Macon, Georgia, Columbus, Georgia. Okay, so this Stonehenge Teotihuacan ley line, right? It's one of the most occupied and manipulated ley lines on the Earth grid, right? When you go to the cities that are on this ley line and you study the art, architecture, archetype symbols that are in those cities, it's all about taking over the world, you know? And Philadelphia is the classic example of it. Philadelphia has more public art than any other city in the world other than Paris, France. Over 5,000 pieces of registered public art. And when you decode it, yeah, what they're telling you in the public art of Philadelphia, if someone was to stand up and tell you in English, you would resist it because it's a diabolical intention. But because they tell you in public art, first we got to even choose to pay attention. You know what I mean? And then once we decide, okay, now we're going to pay attention, we then have to really research the language of the muses to understand what it is we're looking at. You know, this is that whole phenomenon of hidden in plain sight, right? So a lot of that is played out on this ley line right here, you know? And like I said, Philadelphia is a very important city on this Stonehenge Teotihuacan ley line. It's legend that 6 major ley lines converge in Philadelphia. The tradition says this point right here in Philadelphia, which is the Commodore Barry statue, which is in a courtyard behind Independence Hall at 6th and Walnut, right? The 6 major ley lines converge right here. And here's Independence Hall. Of course, this is where the nation was birthed, right? So that would kind of follow, that it would be such an energetically, that's like, again, if we take the analogy of ley lines into the planet as chi meridians are to our body, right? Philadelphia would be a major point. You know, if you activate that specific point, you're having a system reset, right? So this is kind of what we envision that 6 ley line grid looking like within the confines of Philadelphia, right? And this is the aerial view of that courtyard at Independence Hall. It even looks like a convergence point, but it seems like there are major mounds in Philadelphia, right? We would say Philadelphia is a Cincinnati, a city of 7 hills, and that there's 7 significant high points in Philadelphia. And if you connect these mounds to Independence Hall, it seems to define the ley line network within the city, right? And again, here's a map of it. Again, all of this you can find in those 2 books that I mentioned if you want to get deeper into this. But as we said, one of the important ley lines that runs through Philly is the Stonehenge Teotihuacan ley line, okay? And there's several other east, west, and north traversing ley lines. Well, 5 exactly. I said several, but 5 that intersect this. This is the Stonehenge Teotihuacan ley line here. Then you see there's others pointing north and west of the city, right? How do those ley lines spread throughout the state of Pennsylvania? That's a question we've been attempting to answer. And what does this have to do with this idea of Pennsylvania being the keystone state on this Stonehenge ley line? Is there a connection? And I know I keep mentioning it, but because I will point this out. I'm sure most of y'all have heard of the Philadelphia experiment, the military experiment that occurred August 12th, 1943. It seemed to kind of either intentionally or not, but kind of usher in this age of using technology to manipulate timelines, right? Manipulate the fabric of space-time, right? It is legend that at the exact time the Philadelphia experiment was occurring, there were a group of mystics at Stonehenge in England, particularly Aleister Crowley and like his crew, and they were engaging in something. So that always put it in my mind like, man, there's something about Stonehenge and the keystone. You know, both a hinge and a key are tools to open a door, open a portal, right? And so again, this is why we're asking these questions, right? Is there some connection here, right? So one way we can identify those ley lines is the alignment of cities. We saw that on that Stonehenge Teotihuacan ley line, it was just marked with cities, right? So let's look at Pennsylvania and see if we see alignments of cities. And maybe that'll show us where some of those other ley lines that we saw were going west and north in the state, where they might be flowing, right? So here's Philadelphia, right? Here's that Stonehenge Teotihuacan ley line. If we check it, here's another possible ley line defined by an alignment of Philadelphia, Bethlehem, and Scranton. Here is Philadelphia, Kutztown, and Bloomsburg. Okay? And this third ley line running this way may be defined by an alignment of Philadelphia, Ephrata, and Harrisburg. Scranton, Bloomsburg, and Harrisburg. Scranton, Bloomsburg, Harrisburg. This may be where these ley lines are intersecting the Susquehanna River. Okay? All of these cities are on the Susquehanna. Bethlehem may be where this ley line intersects the Lehigh River. Kutztown is where this ley line intersects the Ontelawney Creek, and Ephrata is where this ley line intersects the Calcoca Creek. Okay? So this is what we would say, like, this might be what gives the geomantic meaning to the placement of these cities. Why are the cities where they are? They could be anywhere, right? And why are these cities appearing to make an alignment, right? Looking at it from this lens says, okay, maybe they put these cities on these ley lines, these magnetic meridians of the earth, right, to tap that energy. But of course, they're going to want to put the cities on some running water, some moving water. Maybe a place where there's a confluence of water, two or more creeks or rivers coming together. You know, like Philadelphia is where the Delaware and the Schuylkill come together. You know, Schuylkill rivers. And usually you'll find several of these features in the placement of cities, right? So it also gives geomantic meaning to another place we've yet to talk about, but I think is relevant to here and relevant to this whole discussion, and that is PA Stonehenge. So Pennsylvania does have what's called a PA Stonehenge, a megalithic park with, you know, giant stone structures that are reminiscent of Stonehenge. Okay? That's kind of to the north and the east of Bethlehem and Kutztown, right? And if we plot that, look at this, almost a perfect pentagram is created with the other points that we've been talking about with these ley lines, right? And if we make that almost perfect pentagram, look at where we are in that. Stonehenge Gardens. It's almost like you're centered within the entire configuration. And you can almost make a east-west split. If you draw a straight line from Scranton to Ephrata, it dissects the pentagram almost perfectly and runs right through Stonehenge Gardens, right through where we are, right? So I don't think these, like when you see alignments like that, it's hard to say it's coincidental, right? It is more synchromistic, and it does reaffirm, like, yo, there's something up with this idea of a Stonehenge, right? It would be good to hear the history and intention of the ones that founded here. What was your inspiration, you know? And I know it's actually, I saw it was technically Stonehenge, not Stonehenge. Am I right? It's Stonehenge Gardens, right? So it's a play on Stonehenge, but same way it's that idea, you know? So here is some images of PA Stonehenge I was telling you about. It's called Kalumsil State Park. What is it? Kalumsil? Thank you so much. I've yet to go there, right? It's on my bucket list, right? But what you say?
It ain't that far.
It's not that far.
It's dope. It's dope.
And when you say not that far from here, how close is it?
Maybe from here, like an hour and a half.
Hour and a half.
Maybe.
Oh, right.
Less than 2.
Okay.
It's worth the drive.
It's worth the drive, all right? How many people else have heard of this state park? All right, give thanks. So here's some examples of the megalithic stone works you find there. And again, it raises the question, is PA a keystone that opens the Stonehenge ley line, you know? I think we're ready for some questions. I wasn't gonna, so again, this is the alignment that I think is really significant, you know, nothing to just say, oh, it's coincidental. I think it does give us a good idea of where, if we said 6 ley lines intersect in Philadelphia, right? And we know one is coming from New York and then going through Wilmington. We can easily define that trajectory. Where's the trajectory of the other ones, right? I think this gives us good insight. And we see there's this theme of Stonehenge geomantically imprinted in it, and this land is a part of that, right? Yeah. So, hey, thank you for letting me share, and I hope it was clear and relevant for you, because I was even thinking like, man, I ain't talking about no mushrooms. You know, I was trying to think like, how does this relate with mushrooms? Like, maybe you have to take a lot of mushrooms to relate to this, you know? I don't know, but nah, y'all been very gracious. Thank you, and yes.
So, all right. But I will say this.
So let's pick up. So
Yeah.
right now, this is afterwards.
This
Someone
is
just watched that.
afterwards,
So
right.
now we're talking like that. Everyone knows what that was just said.
So, yo, I tell you what, when you say obedience is its own reward,
Okay.
right? If you get some inner inspiration,
Mm-hmm.
right, follow that thing. Because I got the downloads for that presentation almost right after you reached out to me about it. So that was shortly after Pittsburgh, right? And Pittsburgh was in May. It was in April.
And April.
End of April, right? So in May, I was getting those downloads about what I presented, right? But the thing was, at that time, it didn't make sense to focus on that. I had a lot of other stuff on my plate.
To focus on the
To
presentation.
focus on, why should I be focusing on a presentation that was months down the line, right? What was that? August,
Right.
May,
Right.
June,
You
July.
had fires right in front of you.
I
You
had
could be
fires right in front of me, but this information was coming like, you know, boop, boop. So I just surrendered
Mm-hmm.
and
Obedience.
and did it, right? But then the way time unfolded, if I had waited to what would have seemed like the time to plan for it,
Right.
which would have been about a month out from it, I wouldn't have been able, man, I couldn't think to do nothing
Yeah.
like that, you know. I
Yeah.
didn't have the focus and the bandwidth, you know.
The circumstances of life, you're like, it would have been
It would have
impossible.
been impossible.
It would have been
It
impossible.
would have been impossible. But the fact that I had it in the chamber, that thing was in the chamber,
Mm-hmm.
and like I said, by that point, I was looking at it as maybe like this thing is probably an opportunity to heal. Get out the city for a minute, just get out of the routine, be around some good people, in some nature, and that's what it was. It helped me reset. It did. It did. It helped. It helped. When I returned to Philly, I was in a more productive frame of mind. Like I could
Function.
yeah, all right, I'm gonna do this. I could do that. So yeah, man, I'm thankful.
So first off, I appreciate the vulnerability, the openness you're showing us. So it's to share that, like, kind of brings us all in the in an empathy of the experience, because what you did quite literally, and I want to explain from what I saw, what you did at Mycofest was quite literally the master of ceremonies. Like, you're the one who's running the show, and this is what I was carrying going into this. And that to me is really significant in terms of understanding what occurred. What, like, literally occurred. Like, we live our lives and we talk about these things, but we're also, like, we're in a, whatever this life dance is, we're doing it. Like, this is what it looks like. So I'm sitting front and center. I'm sitting front and center at the presentation. So Mycofest, there are a couple main pieces of it. One part is a sharing of information, and the other is like kind of like an experience where everyone goes into the woods and looking for mushrooms. And so from all of these different activities, there was this one central location where the central stage was, which is where you were presenting, and you were presenting like right before like the big like entertainment of the festival, which was fantastic. But it was like a key spot, and it's day 2, and I'm aware of everything that's going on, and me and Mama Kim sit right in the center, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna watch this show. Like, I know what's going on, and I'm witnessing like what's gonna happen, but I don't know what's gonna happen. And so what I see is the audience begins to like slowly like fill into the audience. Like, you go up there and you're like, this is what I'm gonna do. I'm here, and I'm gonna go and talk. So a little bit like, I don't want to say chaotic, but there's a lot going on in the back, and it just kind of naturally unfolded.
It was definitely a live spot. There was
Live
a lot
spot.
happening.
There's a lot, and then like slowly, like it began to take form. The audience, like people are starting to, like, maybe some people knew they wanted to come to this presentation, and they showed up, or maybe people were walking by and they saw something which they're not used to seeing at this place. Like, that's kind of interesting, because the entire audience, by definition, at Mycofest is open-minded. Right. And so they're like, what? Right. And so like it starts to fill. So I'm watching all of this, and this is what literally happened. So you walked the audience through a understanding of energy ley lines in the land which we're literally standing upon, and you began with the foundation of a lot of like your original or first known work in Philadelphia, and like understanding this ley line grid, and then you then went and you showed how, well, if we understand the urban geomancy techniques, we can then go and begin to see this on a larger scale. So this is almost like, to me, it's like a magician like revealing a trick. Like, if you've ever seen, like, there's some ways like which magicians like perform, they're telling you how they're giving you the trick at the same time, but you still have no idea what they're doing. You're still like left dumbfounded. And so you're like saying, well, there's this, and there's this line right here, and you're showing it out on all these cities. And then in the key spot, and I don't know the name of the word in the pentagram, where we were all sitting, you were showing like, and this is like that epicenter. Yeah. And there was this immediate real-time thing that happened, because this was in your mind. Like, you knew this. You were downloaded this. I believe you shared me some of those slides. Maybe you shared the slides with some other people. You were talking it through. But other than that, like, this has not been something which has been voiced.
Right.
Like, there is something that happens when something is voiced for the first time in this realm, and it's received and it's witnessed. So that happens. So that's layer one. So this is happening. That's the master of ceremonies aspect. But it's not just like, you're on, exactly.
Huh.
It's not like you're at Carnegie Hall in New York talking about some place in Nepal. You're saying, I'm telling you people
This is where we are.
right
here,
now.
right
And it's like you
now.
pull it back and you pull it back. And it's like, I'm showing you all these things and I'm showing you this. And you guys are an unusual group. How are you? Half of you are on mushrooms right now.
Huh.
And the other half were on mushrooms last night. And you are open to receive. And this makes logical sense. And that is a feedback loop within the consciousness of like reality. Like that
Right.
literally happened. Like for the first time that was said, it was received at the location on the earth, which we're talking about, by people who could understand it in a joyful, like trying to heal whatever the last 3 years, 3 decades, 3 whatever, like, that's where we are collectively. And that happened.
Yeah.
And so like, I'm watching that and I'm like, does anyone else, like I'm thinking in my head, does anyone else know what's going on? But I'm still thinking I'm watching this as an observer.
Huh.
So then I start driving home, and then that moment on, everything just started getting really, really wonky. I'm always looking for wonkiness, but it even got wonkier in my life, and it was so tangible, like almost how you said. So this is what I'm going to suggest, is like coming through that portal of Mycofest. Like you said, that it enabled you to meet you where you were in your life. And what that was is I was able to begin to step into my functionality of what it takes to be alive and be human and be a father and be a man at this particular time. And for mine, it met me in this wonkiness. But it was so clear that it could not be missed. And so when we begin to look at this larger trajectory of what we started, like that is the level in which I'm witnessing. And when you tell the story, for me to understand it as you as a human being, but then also for me to recognize of its influence has been, it's been an honor.
Yes, I.
Okay.
Yeah.